The world of Eldoria and the protagonist's journey. The world of Eldoria was a land of breathtaking beauty and ancient mystery, where towering forests stretched endlessly toward the sky and mountains bore the scars of forgotten wars. Rivers, silver in the moonlight, wound through valleys of emerald grass, their waters whispering secrets of an age-long past. In the east, the sun rose over the vast desert of Zareth, where the sands shimmered like molten gold, hiding the ruins of civilizations lost to time. To the west, the Sea of Valan lapped against the shores of the kingdom of Arden, its waves carrying the songs of sailors who had long since vanished into legend. Eldoria was a land of wonder and peril, where the line between myth and reality blurred, and where the past still whispered through the wind. At the heart of this world stood the city of Vareth, a place of towering spires and winding streets where merchants from distant lands bartered for rare artifacts and scholars debated the mysteries of the cosmos. It was here that Kaelen, a young man of uncertain origins, found himself drawn into a mystery that would change the course of his life. Kaelen had no memory of his past, only the vague recollections of a childhood spent wandering the outskirts of Vareth, where he had been found by a group of wandering monks who had raised him as their own. Though he had been given a name and a home, he had always felt like an outsider, as though something was missing from his very being. The monks had taught him the ways of the world, but they had never spoken of his origins, and Kaelen had long since stopped asking. Yet, as he grew older, a strange restlessness had taken hold of him, a feeling that he was meant for something greater than the quiet life of a scholar or a scribe. He had always been drawn to the old ruins that lay beyond the city, the remnants of a civilization that had once ruled Eldoria before vanishing into obscurity. The monks had warned him of the dangers that lay beyond the city walls, of the creatures that lurked in the shadows, and the ancient forces that had long since faded into legend. But Kaelen could not ignore the pull of the unknown, the feeling that something awaited him beyond the familiar streets of Vareth. As the sun set over the city, casting long shadows across the cobbled streets, Kaelen stood at the edge of the city, gazing out at the vast expanse that lay before him. He did not know what awaited him beyond the walls, but he knew one thing for certain. His journey was only just beginning. The discovery in the ruins. Kaelen's footsteps echoed against the ancient stone as he ventured deeper into the ruins that had long been abandoned by time. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and the distant hum of unseen creatures. Towering columns, once proud and unyielding, now leaned precariously, their surfaces etched with symbols that no longer held meaning. He traced his fingers along the worn carvings, feeling the weight of history pressing against his skin. This place had once been a grand temple, a sanctuary for those who had sought knowledge and power beyond mortal comprehension. Now, it was little more than a forgotten relic, swallowed by the passage of centuries. As he moved further into the ruins, the dim light of his lantern flickered against the walls, revealing murals that depicted scenes of a forgotten age. Warriors clad in armor unlike any Kaelen had ever seen stood in battle, their weapons glowing with an otherworldly light. At the center of the murals was a figure, shrouded in shadow, their hands outstretched as though commanding the very fabric of reality. Kaelen felt a strange pull toward the image, as though the figure was calling to him across the void of time. He had seen such symbols before, in the old tomes that the monks had kept in their library, but never in such a vivid, almost living form. As he sticky, hub, hordage, inters lycus, pounded as he pressed on, the ruins whispering secrets in a language he could not understand. Then, at the center of the chamber, he saw it. A pedestal of dark stone upon which rested an object that pulsed with an eerie, golden light. It was a small amulet, its surface etched with the same strange symbols that adorned the walls. Kaelen hesitated, his fingers trembling as he reached out to touch it. The moment his skin met the cold metal, a surge of energy coursed through him, and the world around him seemed to shift. The air grew heavy, thick with a presence that had not been there before. Shadows coiled at the edges of his vision, stretching and twisting like living things. The low, resonant hum filled the chamber, vibrating through the stone and into his bones. Then, without, the moment his skin met the cold metal, a surge of energy coursed through him, and the world around him seemed to shift. The air grew heavy, thick with a presence that had not been there before. Warning! The amulet flared with a blinding light, and Kaelen was thrown backward, crashing to the ground. He struggled to his feet, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The amulet still glowed, but the light was no longer steady. It pulsed in time with his own heartbeat. Kaelen's mind reeled. He had never felt anything like this before, not even when he had touched the ancient tomes or studied the old legends. This was different. This was real. Then, from the darkness beyond the ruins, a voice echoed through the chamber. It was not a voice, but a presence, a whisper that slithered through his thoughts. "You have awakened what was meant to remain buried." Kaelen turned sharply, his lantern casting long, flickering shadows across the stone. At the entrance of the chamber, a figure stood, cloaked in darkness, their face obscured by the shifting light. Their presence was undeniable, yet they did not move, as though waiting for something. Kaelen's grip tightened around the amulet, his pulse hammering in his ears. He had found something, something powerful. But he did not yet know what it meant, and as the shadows deepened and the air grew colder, Kaelen realized that he was no longer alone, the arrival of the unlikely allies. The figure at the entrance of the chamber did not move, but Kaelen could feel the weight of their presence pressing against him, as though the very air had thickened with unseen force. The amulet still pulsed in his hand, its golden light flickering like a heartbeat. He had no idea what this meant, but he knew one line. The air grew colder. Kaelen realized that he was no longer alone. The arrival of the unlikely allies. The figure at the entrance of the chamber did not move, but Kaelen could feel the weight of their presence pressing against him, as though the very air had thickened with unseen force. Had never felt before trust. They had no reason to be here, no connection beyond the moment, and yet they had chosen to stand with him. The creature lunged. Kaelen barely had time to react before Dane was at his side, his sword flashing in the dim light. Elira, though unarmed, moved with surprising agility, her knowledge of the ancient texts guiding her steps as she dodged the creature's strikes. Kaelen, still clutching the amulet, felt its power surge through him, and for a moment he saw something. Something that had been hidden from them all. The amulet was not just a relic. It was a key to something far greater than any of them had imagined. But for now, they had a battle to fight. As the creature howled, the three of them stood. Together, their fates now intertwined. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it as one, the shadow of the past. As the battle raged, the creature's movements became more erratic, its form flickering as though it were caught between two realities. Kaelen, Elira, and Dane fought with all their strength, but the creature was relentless, its attacks growing more precise with each passing moment. The amulet pulsed in Kaelen's hand, its golden light intensifying, and for a brief instant he saw something beyond the battlefield, a vision of a time long past, of a world where the amulet had once held power over all things. Then, the creature let out a final, deafening cry, and the ground beneath them cracked as though the very earth had been wounded. The amulet flared with a blinding light, intensifying, and for a brief instant he saw something beyond the battlefield, a vision of a timeline end, unlike anything he had ever known, surged through him. It was not just power, it was knowledge, a flood of memories and truths that had been buried for centuries. A voice echoed in his mind, not spoken but felt, as though it had been waiting for him to hear it. "You have awakened the key, but the lock is not yet broken." Kaelen staggered, the weight of the revelation pressing down on him. He looked to Elira and Dane, who were still fighting the creature, their movements fueled by instinct and desperation. He had no time to process what he had just seen, but he knew one thing. This was not just a battle for survival, it was a battle for something far greater. The creature, now weakened, let out a final, guttural roar before its form dissolved into but in them. But as the silence stretched between them, a new sound echoed through the ruins. It was not the growl of the creature, nor the crack of stone beneath their feet. It was the sound of something else, something that had been waiting in the shadows, watching, waiting for the moment when the amulet's power had been unleashed. A low, resonant voice filled the chamber, its words like a whisper carried on the wind. "You have awakened what was meant to remain buried. Now, you must face the truth of what you have done." Kaelen's breath caught in his throat. The voice was familiar, though he could not place it. It was not the creature's voice, nor the voice of the amulet. It was something else entirely. Then from the darkness beyond the ruins, of the past faded into the stillness of the ruins, Kaelen stood at the threshold of a new beginning. The weight of the amulet in his hands was no longer a burden, but a symbol of the journey he had undertaken, not just to uncover his own past, but to forge a future with those who had become his family. Elira, Dane, and the others who had stood beside him had not merely been companions in this trial, they had been the foundation upon which he had built his own sense of belonging. Elira, the scholar who had once sought knowledge for knowledge's sake, had found something far greater in the journey they had taken together. She had come to understand that knowledge was not just a pursuit, but a responsibility, one that required not only the wisdom of the past, their poem on Eldoria. They had been the foundation upon which he had built his own sense of belonging, but the courage to shape the future. Her once rigid certainty had softened, giving way to a deeper understanding of the world and the people who inhabited it. She had learned that the greatest truths were not always written in ancient tomes, but in the bonds between those who chose to stand together. Dane, the warrior who had spent his life chasing ghosts, had found a purpose that extended beyond battle. He had long believed that his strength was meant to protect others, but now he understood that true strength lay in the trust he had placed in those who had become his family. He had once been alone in his pursuit of answers, but now he had found a brotherhood that would not let him walk the path of the past alone. And Kaelen, the boy who had once wandered the streets of Vareth with no memory of where he had come from, had found a home, not in the ruins nor in the city, but in the people who had stood by him. He had spent his life searching for something, for a place where he belonged, and now he knew that the answer had never been in the past, but in the people who had chosen to walk beside him. The world of Eldoria had changed, not just in the way the ruins had been uncovered, but in the way the people who had once been strangers now stood as one. The amulet, once a relic of forgotten power, had become something more, a reminder that even the most ancient of forces could be shaped by the choices of those who wielded them. The first light of dawn filtered through the broken arches of the ruins. Kaelen looked to the horizon, where the world stretched out before him. He did not know what lay ahead, but he no longer feared the unknown. He had found his family, and with them he would shape the future. And in that moment, he knew that no matter where the path led, he would never walk it alone. Do not forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more stories. Hit the notification bell to be notified of new stories when they become available. Feel free to leave a comment and tell me if you enjoyed the story and want to hear more like it.